Hello and welcome back to Speed Model. So, we're kinda done with tomatoes. Now, this is the 7th out of 8 episodes, so it's about time we started doing some fine-tuning around the room. All this, of course, in preparation for the big render that will come next episode. So what we're trying to achieve today is we're just gonna try to make the look of the room in general pop a little bit more. Let's see how we're gonna do this. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching episode 7 of Speed Model. I zip around the kitchen for a while and decide that the next thing I want to add is a little fume hood above the cooker. This is also an extremely simple meshed model, just a cube with a cut in the center and the bottom flared out. I tweak its position a little and then pop over to the material settings to give it a glossy texture. I also make the surface rough so it doesn't appear mirror-like. As I pop around again looking for something else to add, I realize that the lamps seem to be at a strange angle, so I take some time to fix that. I decide that the next thing to add will be a little plate. I start off with a simple circle, cut a hole in the center and fill that in. Then I add a little lip you see at the bottom of all plates. After switching back to the shaded view, I realized that the shading was really weird. As you can see, it turns out the plate was missing a bottom layer, which I am filling in. Still didn't fix the problem though. I realized that one set of faces still didn't shade correctly. I eventually select the whole lot of faces and delete them, making a new bottom for the plate. I switch on ray tracing just to make sure it looks okay. To make the depths of the plate more obvious in the render, I mess about with the proportions of the plate a little more, and set the base of the plate to flat shading. I also check that the shadows under the plate look natural. Then I turn my attention to some utensils. I start with a flat plane, subdivided it, and put a lattice over it. As you can see, I'm being incompetent again because I couldn't find some settings, and you see me going through the menus. However, I finally found what I was looking for. I turned to modify the back end of the utensil, which I decided was going to be a spoon. I chop it up and curve it in slightly. I turn my attention to the front of the spoon, extending the mesh and subdividing it. I also modify the mesh to be rounded and roughly spoon-shaped. As you can see, not using a lattice means having to sweat the details about where each point goes. Since this is a relatively simple mesh, however, I decide to do it this way instead. Eventually, I'm satisfied and set the shading to smooth. It doesn't look great in a ray trace view, but putting on the glossy texture helps tremendously. I place the spoon closer to the plate and at an angle. The next thing I'm gonna add is a little drink. Just for fun, I decide to use the lathing method to do this instead. As you can see, I'm simply drawing out the outline of a little glass. This method actually spins the mesh around at a point, like a lathe in a workshop. This will construct a nice rounded mesh. As you can see now, I've completed the lathe process, giving a nice glass shape, but I had to delete it. Glasses without open centers aren't very useful. I repeat the whole process again, this time drawing out a double edge instead of a single one. When lathed, this will create a nice thin shell, instead of creating a solid cylindrical shape. Panning around, you can now see that the glass has an open top. Then I give it a glassy material. I tweak around with the refractive index a little to make it look more natural. Then I duplicate the glass. This will actually be used as the contents of the glass. I remove the inner edge and cover up the top. This one has to be a solid hunk. I move it into the glass and scale it down a little. The shape is already correct, and I can easily jump in straight to coloring it and not having to worry about it looking weird. I go for a deep red color and position the glass near the plate. Now I hop back into my browser to look for a nice wooden texture for the floor. I wanted something that would contrast well against the existing wood textures already in the scene, and eventually opt for a very dark wood texture. In GIMP, I use the color balance tool to artificially change the species of this tree. I don't think it's very happy about that, but it works for the kitchen. I go ahead and apply the texture to the floor, scaling it appropriately first. I also make the floor very slightly glossy. I didn't want it to look too grandiose since this is a kitchen after all, but eventually I settled for a very slightly glossy look. One last tweak to the direction of the floor texture and we're ready to render. This render took about 10 minutes, providing the following results. And there you have it. Next episode will be the last episode of this series. We will formally wrap up the entire construction of the kitchen and well, we'll go through some renders. Anyway, that's all there is for this particular episode. I'll see you guys next week. You're watching 0612 TV. Hello, thanks so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember that I appreciate every like, favorite, and comment you give me. If you'd like to see more from me in the future, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And for more updates outside of YouTube, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at 0612TV. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.